Hello and welcome to my channel, From Profession to Passion, with me, Vicky Mittman. The purpose of this channel is to inform and inspire professionals to live their careers on their terms. Whilst the traditional route in many professions may work well for some, it isn't for everyone, and there are different ways of doing things. On this channel, I'll be sharing my own story of how I combined my profession in law with my passion for coaching and mentoring, and I'll be interviewing other professionals who've developed their own side hustles, changed career directions altogether, or found some other way to involve their passions in their professional lives. Hello and welcome. I'm joined today by the lovely Katie Allen, who is a DEI consultant, speaker, and podcast host. She's also a leadership confidence coach. But that's not where it all started for Katie, and I'd love for you to share a little bit of your story if you're happy to.
Oh, thank you so much for having me along, Vicky. I would love to share my story. So where to begin? So it's funny when talking about the work that I do now, nobody ever wakes up in the morning and goes, oh, yes, I'm going to be a DEI consultant. It always starts somewhere much, much earlier on. And the same is true for me. So, a very long time ago, like 20 years ago, I had my first taste of working in HR and I absolutely loved it. So that was something that I thought, oh, I'm going to continue this as a career. And I started kind of working towards, like, as you do, beavering away HR qualifications. And my head was turned by this amazing project coordination role in the petrochemical industry. And I had no idea what that was. All I knew it was that there was this job that was on the horizon. They were going to pay me a load of money and I was going to get to go and work on oil refineries within the UK and in Holland. And I was like, yes, this sounds amazing. So I signed up and I started doing that. And what I encountered in working in this environment was it's an incredibly, for your viewers and listeners, if they don't know, the petrochemical industry is a hugely male-dominated industry. And I thought, I can handle that. That's really cool. I can brazen it out. Turns out I couldn't. And I thought, okay, what am I going to do in this environment? And I spent so much time in this environment, really trying to kind of figure out who I was and how I fit in and how do I make sense of this environment and create something that maybe is less male dominated. And I was intent for 10 years in this job. So I worked my way up through this organization and I ended up as part of their European leadership team in a commercial position. And even then I found myself coming up against what I now recognize to be complete acts of misogyny. And it's so interesting when I kind of reflect back on how I behaved and how I handled myself, and the change that I really wanted to make and that I wasn't as effective at making that I would have liked to have been. So I find all that really, really interesting. And that's when I started thinking, oh, I know HR, that was where it was at. That's what I started to do. That was my passion. I should go back into HR because that's how we work in organizations, isn't it? And I completely took that pivot then of thinking, okay, I've got all this leadership experience and commercial experience. I'm going to get into HR because now I know how businesses are run. I've been running a multi-million-pound business myself. I'm going to be really good in HR because I can bring HR and business together. And I'm going to do things that are going to make these spaces more inclusive. Winner, winner. And then I was sorely, bitterly disappointed because I got into HR and realized, oh no, now I'm just in charge of all the policies and procedures that I don't really like. And actually, I have less sway in agency now. I'm in an HR position than when I was in a commercial position. And it was wholly frustrating. So what I then decided to do as an opportunity came along through redundancy was to think, actually, do you know what? I'm going to put my money where my mouth is here and I am going to completely step up and go it on my own and retrain and kind of take myself through this DEI lens, because I thought that's how you make change. You have to really be working with organizations who want to open the door to this stuff. So rather than trying to work on the inside and try and create change that maybe, people aren't really into, I was going to kind of go from the outside and come in and help advise organizations and how to create the kind of environments that they want for their people. And that, in a nutshell, is how I ended up to where I am. So it was through my own experiences and kind of frustrations and those realizations of all the things that I did wrong as a leader, not really paying it forward for the other women in my organization, probably trying to assimilate too closely to the kind of the more masculine traits that I thought were going to get me where I needed to be on that career ladder. and then realizing with all those mistakes I can share what I've learned from making them so that other people don't have to repeat them, alongside all the other good stuff that I've learned along the way as well.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for sharing. It's a really fascinating thing that it came from your desire to make effective change, but it's a case of how to do that. And you tested a few options, didn't you? Like going back into HR, thinking maybe that's where it was, and thinking maybe not. And also, rather than working just for one organization, working for, now as a consultant to many, because what you'll see is, industry styles and norms, you'll see organizational cultures, and you'll see very different things, which is great because that helps to inform your practice, but also you're going to make much more change, it seems, working the way you do now to the way you were before.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, there's a really good point in there, in that even within the same industry, no organization is the same as the next. Everything when it comes to doing the work of inclusion is really specific with regards to what is the culture of your organization in the context of how you want to work and the product or service that you sell. So there's no point, just thinking, this company over here are doing it really well, we'll just copy what they do, because chances are it's just not going to work for you. So it has to be something that we think about and understand for ourselves.
Yeah, and that's the deeper level, isn't it? Actually having it something that they're buying into rather than just paying lip service to. And I'm sure you see that a lot, just people copying and pasting policies or or statements from other organizations. And we see it all the time as lawyers as well, just how people just copy things, certainly in respect of DEI and CSR. They just sort of copy what the big companies say they're doing, but actually looking at their organization and how they want to do things and making that change at a more emotional based level, and making sure their training, their onboarding process, their HR policies are in place to support it, rather than just the big things that might be more public facing.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So what have you perhaps enjoyed most about your transition? What is it you love now about what you do?
But for me, what has been the most enjoyable is it's been this kind of learning journey of figuring out, like, what are my own core values? Like, really, what do I stand for? Because I think that is something that I didn't have such a grasp on when perhaps I needed to, through those early years when I was trying to drive change, because I knew something wasn't right. I knew things needed to change, but to articulate why it was jarring to me was really difficult, other than the very obvious overt things. Whereas now, kind of going through training as a coach and doing the more deeper level work of understanding where do I feel my discomfort when it comes to these situations and why, it's really learning that my core key drivers are around like courageous conversations, meaningful connections, freedom and autonomy, and fun. Quite frankly, I like a bit of humor, and I like to be curious and to learn things, but in more of a playful, exploratory way. And kind of figuring all of that out about myself, I was like, well, no wonder I'm a really rubbish employee. Like, I don't take direction very well. I don't like to do what I'm told. I'm always questioning, well, why are we doing it this way? How does that work for everybody? Truly, I was a real pain in the behind for a lot of people. And now I work for myself. I'm like, oh, now I understand this, because actually I can follow my own internal compass and be like, no, this is the right thing for me to be doing. And people that want to work with me in that way wants to do that. And if I'm not for other people, then that's okay. That's cool. They don't have to work with me, and that's fine.
That's often one of the best things, isn't it, about when you do go self-employed? You actually have this more honest, transparent, this is who I am.
Yeah.
And if that's not right for people, and it won't be right for everyone, that's okay. But I certainly find it now with the kind of clients I have, both legal clients and coaching clients, it's the personality and the style. And I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but some of my clients have said, Vicky, you're not really like other lawyers. And I take that as a great point of pride, because there are lots of lawyers that all kind of blend in to each other. And I am a bit different to that. But also I think it's because of my coaching side as well. The fact I've been doing that for nearly 6 years now, I think that informs how I act as a lawyer. And certainly having been a professional in private practice and latterly as a consultant and director in a self-employed position, I found that the coaching side has really made me a better lawyer, but also the legal side and how I've worked has helped me with my coaching, certainly in terms of career change and doing things that you're really passionate about. And for years, I didn't feel like I could say, this is why it's so important to me, either because I didn't really know, I hadn't done the work to figure out what was so important. And now I've done that, and I keep doing it, and I do it with my clients. It's amazing what comes up in those conversations now, but it allows me to be a lot more me, rather than the sort of version of me I was tweaking to try and fit into whichever organization I was with. And I think everyone is guilty of doing that, certainly in their early stages when they're young professionals. And certainly if they've got quite dominant team leaders and you just want to do your bit and like not be told off.
Totally, yeah.
You know, as you said, like as you realise, oh, there was a sticking point, why was it there? And then you learn about yourself, it's much easier to then move forward that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And hearing you say that, it really speaks, doesn't it, to that, the level of authenticity that we can bring of ourselves into the work that we do. And I personally, I feel that a lot of my clients work with me because of that.
Yeah.
It's because of I am who I say I am. So when they see me, you know, speaking at an event on social media, then in a meeting one-to-one or having, you know, a workshop, I am always the same person. They know exactly who they're getting. My style is always the same. You know, I'm not the most formal when it comes to the type of language that I use, because this is who I am, and I will show up as who I am.
Yeah.
And that's okay. And there is some confidence, as you were saying, there, isn't there, in that. And if that's not okay, like if that doesn't work for you, that's all right. And I don't feel it personal. It's not personal. There are many, many other good consultants out there. That is great. Go and work with them and have a great time.
Absolutely. Yeah. So what kind of advice would you give yourself if you were looking back to Casey at maybe 21 or 25 years old? Like, what kind of advice would you give her now, knowing what you do?
Well, I mean, the answer's kind of already there, isn't it? I would absolutely have been like, pay more attention to yourself. Because I think, as much as we like to talk about, especially when it comes to leadership, we like to talk about kind of being vulnerable and, you know, having these brave conversations. But actually, I never felt psychologically safe enough to do that. And I wish I'd have had the courage to have done it anyway.
Yeah.
And I know that a lot of that has to do with like sometimes the environment wasn't right, but there were a lot of things that I felt in my bones that I was like, this isn't right, and I let it go. And I kind of wish I had spent more time figuring out who I was and what I stood for, so that when I felt those things, I could have done something about it. Because I feel that that's definitely more in me now, and it would have been nice to have kind of stepped into this power a little bit sooner. And I think I also would be kinder to myself. I was so driven by perfectionism and, you know, just the need to be constantly turned on, constantly performing, always available, always answering the phone. I would say, like, let go of that. Go and have some life with all of this work. Enjoy it, because again, that's part of figuring out who we are, isn't it? I was so consumed by work. I didn't know who I was, and then all of a sudden I'm like, well, you find yourself looking back and who am I exactly? Like, what is going on? And being able to explore and experiment with that has been really, I don't know, soul enriching, I guess is the best way to put it. I feel better.
Way to call it soul enriching. That sounds fantastic. Yeah.
I was on the tip of my tongue was the word nourishing, but I hate that. I feel like it's such coachy speak. It makes me feel sick. So like, but I couldn't think of another word. So it's like, it's just the thing that makes me feel good in my heart and in my soul. And I feel better as me. And I would like to have been able to share some of that with my younger self, so I could stop fretting and just been a bit more me.
Yeah, I hear it a lot when I work with career coaching professionals. I do find that when we do that bit of core values, deeper stuff about, you know, what really makes sense to them, what's important to them, what is at the very core, without worrying about judging or anyone saying that's not right, you shouldn't be that way, you know, just what is it there? And when they realize that, and it takes a bit of digging, it's not just asking yourself, well, what's important to me? There's a lot more to it. That's the starting point. And usually with coaches, you know, as you know, we go a lot further down that route. So it doesn't really matter in terms of like what they come up with, but actually the amount of people that have said to me, I'm really glad I now know that, and I wish I'd known that sooner, because that might have informed the sort of organizations I've worked with, even the kind of partners I've picked, the way I am, you know, with other people, my communication style. It might have informed so much, because I'm, ratty and irritable because there's a disconnect between how I am being, because that's conditioned in me because of the employment I've had, and who I feel actually at my core I am. And I didn't realize there was that disconnect until now. So that's a really important part.
Totally. And you're right. It's so all encompassing in all aspects of our life, right? We don't go to work. Well, actually, some of us do go to work with like this mask on and the coat, and we pretend that we do this thing. But actually, we're human all of the time, and it takes so much energy to have to flit between those states of being. Whereas actually, when we can bring that authenticity that runs through all of it, like,
so much.
Why do we not want to have spaces where we can all do that?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. So, I mean, Katie, it's been amazing to hear your story. If people are interested in your coaching or your consultancy or speaking, even your podcast, how do they get in touch and find out all about it?
Oh, yes, thank you. So, my website is the always available first port of call for people. So it's katieallenconsulting.com. My playground is LinkedIn. So anybody who's interested, please come along and connect with me. Let me know that it's as a result of Vicky that you are coming along to find me, because the profile's set to follow only, but I'll absolutely accept connections if you let me know that you're coming to me because of Vicky. And yeah, my podcast is Speaking of Inclusion podcast. It's very much like this, a series of conversations with people all about the stuff that we get a bit worried about when it comes to talking about inclusion. And that's available on Spotify and Apple.
Yeah, I think one of the first things I saw, because we met through the coaching space, one of the first things I saw was a post you put up or an article, and it said something like, if you've ever thought, oh, should I say this? You need to listen to this. And it was about, just something that everyone's probably thought, oh, was that right? Should I have done that? Yeah. And that's exactly what you do now with your podcast, isn't it? Which is really great, because a lot of people want to listen to it and then just gain confidence and then talk to you about how to make it more of a thing in their organizations.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we all have those moments, right? We all know in our gut, like, I want to say something, I don't know how, and then that fear just shuts everything down, and I'm like, let's get rid of the fear, let's have the conversation, let's
make the odd mistake, but actually like be willing to rectify it, I think is the main thing. A lot of people just don't dare do it for fear. So, well, that's great, thank you. I'll drop all of the links to your social media pages and a website in the bio at the bottom of the video, and I'm sure people will get in touch, but it's usually interesting for people watching these videos, and I get a lot of comments, some privately, so they're not on the LinkedIn feed or whatever, but people saying, I really resonated with something that Katie said, or, it was just really helpful to hear so-and-so say this, because that's how I've been feeling for years and I didn't realize it. So Thank you for sharing your time today and your story. It's been wonderful. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching this video, and I hope it's provided some food for thought. If you've enjoyed it, please subscribe below and feel free to like or comment. I'd love to know what you think. If you're interested in hearing more about this, please join my Facebook community, From Profession to Passion with Vicky Mittman. I'll see you next time.